First contact protocol breached. The warning label glowed an angry red against the pristine white of Dr. Sarah Chen's personnel file. CAO Human Cognitive Anomaly. Supervision required. She'd seen similar labels before, but this one made her smile. After 5 years working as the only human specialist in the Galactic Corporate Alliance, she'd learned that these warnings usually meant she could see something the aliens couldn't. Dr. Chen, your security clearance seems irregular, chirped the Vexillian administrator, their crystalline appendages clicking against the holographic display. The being's translucent body refracted the office lights into dancing patterns, but Sarah kept her focus on those nervous clicks. In her experience, Vexillian anxiety always preceded something interesting. Irregular how? She asked, maintaining the professional calm that had become her trademark. The administrator's crystalline structure clouded slightly, their species equivalent of a frown. The syndicate's hiring protocols explicitly prohibit solo human operators in Class 4 facilities, yet here you are, specifically requested by name. The administrator's voice took on a higher pitch, with a warning label I'd never encountered in my 300 cycles of service. Sarah leaned forward, her interest piqued. Requested by name. By whom? Director Xylix of Advanced Harmonics Research. They've never requested human assistance before. The administrator's crystals chimed in distress. In fact, they'd been quite vocal about maintaining purely consortium species in their division. The plot thickened. Advanced Harmonics Research was the syndicate's most secretive division, dealing with experimental technologies that manipulated the fundamental forces of the universe. They were also notorious for their species-purist policies. When do I start? Sarah asked, already knowing the answer. In the GCA, bureaucracy moved at its own pace, regardless of urgency. Immediately, the administrator surprised her. Director Xylix was most insistent about the timeline. Sarah gathered her few belongings. A tablet loaded with her research, a personal scanner she'd modified to detect wavelengths most aliens ignored, and her lucky ceramic mug with its faded Earth logo. As she stood to leave, the administrator made one final, nervous chime. Dr. Chen, there's something else. All of your equipment must be certified clean of any human modifications. Sarah's hand tightened imperceptibly around her scanner. Standard protocol, of course. Though I should mention my equipment is calibrated specifically for human perception ranges. It would be useless without those modifications. The administrator's crystalline form clouded completely. I suppose that would fall under necessary accommodations. But please, exercise extreme caution. The warning label on your file. It's using encryption protocols I've only seen on planetary extinction event documents. Now that was interesting. Sarah filed that piece of information away as she made her way through the sterile corridors of the syndicate's orbital facility. The station's curved windows offered spectacular views of the gas giant below, its swirling storms a perpetual reminder of nature's capacity for both beauty and violence. The Advanced Harmonics section occupied an isolated arm of the station, separated from the main structure by a series of airlocks and security checkpoints. Each door scan took longer than necessary. Each guard's eyes, or equivalent sensory organs, lingered on her human form with poorly concealed suspicion. Director Xylix's office was exactly what Sarah expected from a being who dealt in harmonics. Every surface seemed to vibrate at a barely perceptible frequency. The director themselves was a resonant, a species that communicated primarily through carefully controlled vibrations of their membrane-like body. Dr. Chen. The director's words came through her translator as a series of melodic tones. Thank you for coming on such short notice. We have a situation that requires your unique perspective. Sarah noticed how the director's membrane tensed when saying the word unique. I assume this has something to do with the warning label on my file. Perceptive, as your species tends to be. The director's surface rippled in what Sarah recognized as discomfort. We've been experiencing anomalies in our latest project. Equipment malfunctions, unexpected readings, harmonic disruptions that defy our understanding. But here's the curious part. These anomalies only seem to occur when humans are present in the testing areas. And since you've historically excluded humans from your research, precisely, we had no baseline for comparison. Until 3 days ago, when a human maintenance worker reported seeing strange patterns in what our sensors showed as normal operations. Within hours, the system experienced a catastrophic failure that our diagnostics still can't explain. The director glided to a nearby console and activated a holographic display. This is a recording of the incident. To us, it shows nothing unusual until the moment of failure. Sarah watched the display carefully. At first, nothing seemed out of ordinary. Standard energy readings, normal harmonic patterns. Then she saw it. A subtle shift in the color spectrum, a barely perceptible flicker that seemed to pulse in a distinct pattern. There, she pointed, about 3 seconds before the failure. Do you see that color shift? The director's membrane went completely still. What color shift? Sarah smiled. Now she understood the warning label. Director, I believe I know why you needed a human. Your project isn't malfunctioning. It's trying to communicate. And for some reason, only humans can see the message. The director's surface erupted in a complex pattern of ripples. Impossible. The harmonics we work with are based on universal constants. They can't be selective by species. Unless, Sarah countered, someone wanted to ensure only certain species could perceive them. Have you considered that these patterns might be artificial? Intentional. The director's response was cut off by a station-wide alarm. Red emergency lights began pulsing throughout the office, and Sarah noticed something that made her blood run cold. The same pattern she'd seen in the holographic display was now visible in the emergency light's pulses. Director, she said carefully, I think your project just went from sending messages to taking action. And I have a feeling that warning label on my file wasn't meant to protect you from me. It was meant to protect you from what I might discover. The station shuddered, and Sarah realized this was just the beginning. Whatever was hidden in those harmonic patterns, it had been waiting for someone who could see it. Now she just had to figure out why. The pattern in the static. The emergency lighting cast alternating shadows across Director Zilix's office as Sarah pulled out her modified scanner. Despite the station's alarms blaring, she focused on the peculiar patterns pulsing through the air, patterns that none of the alien crew could see. Your equipment. The director's membrane vibrated in alarm. Those modifications are not approved. With respect, Director, Sarah interrupted, adjusting the scanner's frequency range. We're well past protocol now. These patterns, they're not random. They're forming a coherent sequence. Her scanner's display confirmed what her eyes had detected. Complex waveforms cycling through specific color frequencies just outside typical alien visual ranges. The pattern repeated every 3.7 seconds, like a beacon or a countdown. The station shuddered again, more violently this time. Through the observation window, Sarah watched as sections of the station's external lighting began blinking in the same mysterious sequence. Director Zilix, a new voice crackled over the intercom. We're detecting harmonic resonance cascades throughout the primary research sectors. Systems are failing station-wide. The director's surface rippled with barely contained panic. Impossible. Our containment fields are working perfectly, Sarah interjected, studying her scanner's readings. That's the problem. They're working too perfectly, amplifying something that was already here, something that's been waiting. A sharp crack echoed through the office as one of the display screens fractured, its surface spiderwebbed with lines that formed an unsettlingly familiar pattern. Sarah's scanner beeped urgently. These patterns, she muttered, they're not just communication, they're code. Ancient code, buried in the fundamental frequencies of this sector of space. She looked up at the director. What exactly were you researching here? The director's membrane tensed into rigid geometrical shapes, a sign of extreme distress in their species. Project Resonance was meant to study natural harmonic frequencies in spacetime. We discovered that certain regions of space contained organized wave patterns, like old scars in reality itself, or like dormant programming. Sarah suggested, her mind racing. Director, I need access to your research data. All of it. That's classified at the highest. Another violent tremor cut off the director's protest. This time, the station's artificial gravity fluctuated, sending loose objects floating momentarily before crashing back down. Your classification system won't matter much if we're all dead, Sarah pointed out sharply. These patterns are reaching critical complexity. We need to understand them now. The director hesitated for a moment before gliding to a secure terminal. Their membrane rippled in a complex authentication sequence, and suddenly Sarah's tablet was flooded with research data. As she scrolled through the information, a chill ran down her spine. The Project Resonance team had discovered something extraordinary. A vast network of quantum-level frequencies woven through space itself, invisible to most species' perceptual ranges. They had assumed these were natural phenomena, but Sarah recognized something else in the data. Look at this, she said, projecting a visualization. These base frequencies, they're not random. They're organized in groups of 7, just like ancient human musical scales. And here, she highlighted a recurring sequence. This pattern appears in Earth's oldest known musical notations. These aren't natural formations. They're components of a system that predates all our civilizations. The director's membrane paled to near transparency. That's not possible. The energy required to encode information at that scale would be astronomical, Sarah agreed. Unless you weren't trying to affect all of space. Unless you just needed to create a network that only certain types of observers could access. She turned to face the director. Your research didn't create these patterns. It just woke them up. And now something is using them. As if in response to her words, every screen in the office suddenly blazed to life, displaying cascading sequences of colors that made Sarah's eyes water. To the director, they would appear as random static, but to her human vision, they formed clear, precise messages. Oh God, she whispered, reading the patterns. It's not just sending messages anymore. It's reconfiguring the station's systems. These harmonics, they're not just communication channels. They're control mechanisms. Someone built a backdoor into reality itself, and we just accidentally gave it access to all your technology. The director's surface became a chaos of conflicting patterns. How? How could anyone? Because they knew, Sarah realized, the truth clicking into place. They knew that eventually, someone would discover these frequencies. They needed to ensure that only the right kind of observers could see their fail-safes, their warning systems. She gestured at her personnel file, still displayed on a nearby screen. That warning label wasn't bureaucratic paranoia. Someone in your organization knew exactly what humans could perceive, and they knew we'd be needed when these systems finally woke up. The station's lights flickered again, and Sarah's scanner began picking up new patterns, more complex than before. Through the window, she could see other sections of the station beginning to pulse with visible energy. Director, she said quietly, I need you to tell me everything about Project Resonance's latest experiments, because I don't think we discovered this system by accident. I think it let us find it. And now it's testing us to see if we're worthy of what comes next. The director's membrane shimmered with decision. Follow me, they said, gliding toward a hidden door panel. There's something you need to see in the main laboratory, something we found 3 days ago, just before the anomalies began. As Sarah followed the director through the station's trembling corridors, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, not by security cameras or sensors, but by something woven into the fabric of space itself, something that had been waiting a very, very long time for someone who could see its signs. And she had a growing suspicion that the real test was just beginning. Wavelengths of truth. The main laboratory of Project Resonance sprawled across an entire deck of the station, filled with equipment Sarah had never seen before. But it wasn't the advanced technology that made her stop in her tracks. It was the walls. Every surface was alive with shifting patterns, invisible to alien eyes, but blazingly clear to her human vision. 3 days ago, Director Zulix's membrane vibrated softly. Our deep space resonance scanners detected something unprecedented, a harmonic signature that seemed to respond to our probes. Sarah watched as the director activated a central holographic display. The air filled with dancing waves of energy, and there, hidden in frequencies that only she could perceive, was something that made her gasp. "It's a key," she breathed. "No, it's thousands of keys, all interlocked." The director's membrane rippled in confusion. "We see only standard quantum fluctuations. What do you mean by keys?" Sarah stepped closer to the display, her modified scanner working overtime to process the complexity of what she was seeing. These patterns aren't random noise. They're encryption keys, coded into specific frequencies that most species' brains filter out automatically. But humans, we evolved to see them. "Impossible." A new voice cut in. Dr. Nexus, the project's lead researcher, emerged from behind a bank of equipment. The quantum being's probability field flickered with skepticism. "Humans are a young species. These harmonics have existed since the beginning." Sarah interrupted, not taking her eyes off the display. "Or since someone placed them there. Look at this pattern." She pointed to a particular sequence. "It matches exactly with how human brains process visual information. These weren't created randomly. They were designed for us to find them." The station shuddered again, more violently than before. Warning lights flashed as new alarms joined the cacophony. "Multiple containment breaches in sections 7 through 12, an automated voice announced. "Quantum stability failing in all research sectors." "It's not failing," Sarah corrected, her eyes widening as she watched new patterns emerge in the holographic display. "It's transforming. These harmonics aren't just passive code. They're a program, and it's running now that it's found its intended user." Dr. Nexus' probability field condensed with concern. "User? These are fundamental forces of the universe, not some computer system." "Aren't they?" Sarah challenged, her fingers flying over her scanner's interface. "We're standing in a laboratory dedicated to manipulating quantum harmonics. You've proven that consciousness can affect quantum states. What if someone, long ago, found a way to encode information into the very fabric of space-time? Information that could only be accessed by observers with specific perceptual abilities." The holographic display suddenly expanded, filling the entire laboratory with cascading waves of energy. To Sarah's eyes, it was like watching an ancient language write itself in light and color. A language she was beginning to understand. "Look at these sequences," she said, projecting her scanner's analysis. "They're not just patterns, they're instructions. Someone left a manual written in the quantum foam of space itself, and they made sure only humans could read it." Director Zulix's membrane paled. "A manual for what?" Before Sarah could answer, every piece of equipment in the laboratory activated simultaneously. Energy readings spiked off the charts as the hidden patterns began manifesting in visible wavelengths, becoming apparent even to alien eyes. "It's a defense system," Sarah realized, watching the patterns coalesce. "No, it's bigger than that. It's a control system for something massive, something spread throughout this entire sector of space, and it's been dormant, waiting for someone who could see its interface." Dr. Nex's probability field sparked with alarm. "The station's quantum core is going critical. These harmonics are affecting every system." "They're not affecting them," Sarah interrupted, her fingers dancing across her scanner's interface as she began to understand the pattern's true purpose. "They're revealing what was always there. Your entire station is built on top of something much older, much more sophisticated. These systems aren't failing. They're being reclaimed." Through the laboratory's windows, Sarah could see other sections of the station beginning to transform. Surfaces that had appeared solid now rippled with encoded energy, revealing layers of technology that had been invisible moments before. The warning label, Director Zulix vibrated urgently. You said it wasn't meant to protect us from humans. No, Sarah confirmed, watching as new patterns emerged, forming what she now recognized as a control interface. It was meant to protect you from what humans would inevitably discover. Someone knew we would find this, knew we would be able to see what no one else could. And they knew what would happen when we did. The station trembled again, but this time Sarah recognized it for what it was, not a malfunction, but a transformation. The ancient system wasn't trying to destroy the station, it was integrating with it, using the GCA's technology as components in something far more vast. We need to evacuate, Dr. Nexus insisted, their probability field fluctuating wildly. The quantum core could collapse at any moment. No, Sarah said firmly, her eyes fixed on the patterns that only she could fully perceive. We need to stay. Because this isn't an accident or a malfunction. It's a test. And if we run now, we fail. And I have a feeling failure isn't an option. She turned to face the director and Dr. Nexus, her expression deadly serious. Whatever civilization left this system, they made sure only humans could control it. They encoded it into frequencies that match our exact perceptual range. This isn't a coincidence. It's an inheritance. And now we have to prove we're ready for it. The patterns around them grew more complex, more urgent. Sarah could see instructions forming, revealing the true nature of what they had discovered. And as understanding dawned, she realized why the warning label had used extinction-level encryption. Because what they had found wasn't just a piece of ancient technology. It was a key to something that could reshape the galaxy itself, something that had been waiting for humanity to evolve enough to see it. Now she just had to figure out how to use it before it tore the station apart. Breaking protocol. The quantum core's containment chamber pulsed with energies that shouldn't exist in normal space. Sarah stood before the massive cylinder, watching patterns cascade across its surface in frequencies that told a story older than human civilization. Behind her, Director Zulix and Dr. Nexus waited in tense silence. The station's structural integrity is at 47% and falling, the automated system announced. Evacuation protocols are now mandatory. Override that order, Sarah commanded, her fingers working across her scanner's interface. Authorization, Chen 7 Alpha. You can't just, Dr. Nexus began, their probability field crackling with alarm. I can, and I am. Sarah cut them off. Because what's happening isn't a malfunction. It's an activation sequence. And if we evacuate now, we lose our only chance to control it. The patterns flowing across the quantum core had become more organized, forming what Sarah now recognized as a complex interface. Each pulse, each shift in color, carried information that only human eyes could properly process. Look at these harmonic sequences, she said, projecting her scanner's analysis. They're not random. They're responding to human presence, adjusting themselves to match our neural patterns. This system isn't just compatible with human perception. It's designed to synchronize with it. Director Zulix's membrane rippled with concern. The core's quantum state is becoming increasingly unstable. If it collapses. It won't collapse, Sarah insisted, her eyes fixed on the shifting patterns. Because this isn't just your technology anymore. What we're seeing is the integration of two systems. Yours and something far more advanced. Something that's been waiting for the right kind of observers. The station shuddered again, and new warnings blared through the chamber. But Sarah had stopped seeing them as warnings. To her eyes, they were transformation markers, signposts in an evolution that had been planned eons ago. There, she pointed to a particular sequence of patterns. That's not a malfunction in your containment field. It's a calibration system, adjusting itself to human neural frequencies. The entire station is being reconfigured, but not randomly. It's following a preset program. Dr. Nexus' probability field condensed with skepticism. That's impossible. The quantum harmonics we work with are fundamental forces. They can't be programmed. Sarah finished. That's exactly what someone did. They found a way to encode information into the quantum fabric itself, using frequencies that most species' brains automatically filter out. But humans evolved to see these patterns. Or maybe, she paused, a new thought striking her, maybe we were guided to evolve this way. The implications of that idea hung heavy in the air as the chamber's transformation continued. Through the observation windows, Sarah could see other sections of the station beginning to align with the new configurations, like pieces of a vast puzzle finally falling into place. The warning label, Director Zilix, vibrated thoughtfully. It used extinction-level encryption because this discovery changes everything, doesn't it? Our understanding of physics, of evolution, of history itself. More than that, Sarah replied, her fingers dancing across her scanner as she began to decode more of the patterns. It changes the balance of power. Whoever left this system knew that eventually, someone would evolve the ability to see it. They wanted to make sure that species would have certain characteristics, not just perceptual abilities, but ethical ones. The quantum core's surface suddenly blazed with new patterns, more complex than anything they'd seen before. Sarah's scanner struggled to process the density of information, but her eyes could follow it, understand it in ways the machines couldn't. It's a test, she breathed, watching the patterns form what she now recognized as a choice matrix. The system isn't just checking if we can see it. It's testing how we'll use it. Each pattern is a potential future, branching out based on the choices we make right now. Another violent tremor shook the station, and more evacuation warnings blared. But Sarah could see beyond the apparent chaos now. The station wasn't breaking down. It was breaking through, transforming into something that bridged the gap between current technology and whatever ancient system they had awakened. "We need to make a decision," she announced, turning to face Director Zilix and Dr. Nexus. "The system is offering us a choice. We can shut it down, return everything to normal, and pretend we never found this. Or, Director Zilix prompted, their membrane tense with anticipation. Or we can accept what it's offering. Full integration. Access to technology that was old when our species was young. But if we do that, everything changes. The balance of power in the galaxy, our understanding of physics, the very nature of what's possible. It all shifts the moment we say yes." Dr. Nexus' probability field fluctuated wildly. "The consortium will never allow. The consortium won't have a choice," Sarah interrupted. "Because this system wasn't left for them. It was left for us. For humans. We're the only ones who can see it, control it, understand it. That's not an accident. It's an inheritance." The quantum core pulsed again, its patterns growing more urgent. Sarah could see the decision point approaching. A moment when they would have to choose between the safe, known path and something far more dangerous, but infinitely more profound. "We're running out of time," she said, watching the patterns shift toward their critical point. "The system needs an answer. Do we accept what it's offering, knowing it will change everything? Or do we back away and let this chance slip through our fingers?" The chamber fell silent except for the hum of transforming technology. Sarah looked at her alien colleagues, seeing the weight of the decision in their postures. Everything they had believed about the universe, about humanity's place in it, was about to change. And as the patterns reached their crescendo, Sarah made her choice, a choice that would reshape the galaxy itself. The warning was for them. The quantum core blazed with light as Sarah's hand touched the interface, patterns spinning out in fractal waves that only human eyes could truly comprehend. In that moment, as ancient technology merged with modern systems, she finally understood why the warning label had been necessary. "Integration at 80%, the station's AI announced, its voice transformed into something deeper, more resonant. Quantum harmonics stabilizing across all sectors. Director Zilix's membrane rippled in awe as the chaos of the past hours resolved into something new. The station wasn't just surviving. It was evolving, becoming something that bridged the gap between current technology and the ancient system they had awakened. "The warning label," Sarah said softly, watching the transformation unfold, wasn't about protecting the station from humans. It was about preparing the station for what humans would inevitably discover. Someone knew we would find this, knew we would understand it, and knew exactly what would happen when we did. Through the observation windows, they could see the changes spreading throughout the station. Surfaces that had seemed solid now revealed layers of quantum-encoded information, visible only to human eyes, but affecting everything they touched. "Look at these readings," Dr. Nexus observed, their probability field fluctuating with excitement. "The quantum harmonics aren't just stable, they're optimizing themselves. The entire station is becoming more efficient, more powerful. Because it's not fighting the ancient system anymore," Sarah explained, her eyes tracking patterns that told a story millions of years old. "It's becoming what it was always meant to be. What's happening now was planned long ago, by beings who understood enough about evolution to predict exactly what kind of species would eventually be able to see their work." The station hummed with new energy as the transformation neared completion. Sarah's scanner, still modified to detect the special frequencies, showed her something extraordinary: a network of quantum connections spreading out from the station, linking to similar nodes hidden throughout this sector of space. "It's not just this station," she realized, watching the network unfold. "This is happening everywhere. We've activated a system that spans the entire sector, maybe further. A network that's been dormant for millions of years, waiting for observers who could actually see it." Director Zilix glided closer to the displays, their membrane shimmering with complex emotions. "The consortium will want control of this technology. They'll try to." "They can't," Sarah interrupted, a smile playing at her lips. "That's the beauty of it. The system only responds to human neural patterns. We're the only ones who can see these frequencies, the only ones who can interface with this technology. That's why the warning label used extinction-level encryption, because whoever left this system knew it would fundamentally change the balance of power in the galaxy." The final integration sequence completed with a pulse of energy that rippled through subspace itself. Status displays throughout the chamber showed something unprecedented: perfect quantum harmony, technologies separated by millions of years working together as if they had been designed that way from the start. "It was never about keeping humans contained," Dr. Nexus said, their probability field settling into a pattern of understanding. "The warning label was to ensure we would be here when the system activated, to make sure humans would be present to guide the transformation." Sarah nodded, watching as new information flowed across the displays, information that had been hidden in quantum frequencies since before Earth's first civilizations rose. "Whoever left this system didn't just leave us technology. They left us a responsibility. They trusted that when humanity evolved enough to see these patterns, we would also have evolved enough wisdom to use them properly." The station's new systems were coming fully online now, revealing capabilities that defied current understanding of physics. Quantum communications that worked across any distance instantly, energy generation that drew power from the fabric of space itself, and something else, something that made Sarah catch her breath: maps showing similar installations scattered throughout the galaxy, all waiting to be awakened. "The warning label on my file," she said, understanding finally dawning, "wasn't just about this station, or even this sector. It was about what happens next. Because now that we've activated one node of the network, we can find the others. And each one we awaken will reveal more of whatever grand design was set in motion millions of years ago." Director Zilix's membrane pulsed with a complex mixture of emotions. "What do we do now?" Sarah looked at the quantum core, at the patterns that danced across its surface in frequencies only she could see. The ancient system had tested them, had judged their reactions and their choices, and had found them worthy of what came next. "Now," she said, watching as new coordinates began appearing in the quantum frequencies, "we follow the path that was laid out for us. We find the other nodes. We wake them up. And we learn why, millions of years ago, someone decided that humanity would be the key to whatever they were building." She turned to face her alien colleagues, her expression both serious and excited. "The warning label wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning. And what comes next? Well, that's why they needed to warn everyone else about what humans would discover. The station hummed with new power, new purpose, as humanity took its first steps into a future that had been waiting for them since before they learned to walk upright. And somewhere, in frequencies that only human eyes could see, Sarah thought she detected something that might have been satisfaction, as if some ancient plan had finally, after millions of years, begun to unfold exactly as intended.